Will the market go up or down? Should you lock in or float? Find out this and more with Master of the Markets, hosted by Barry Habib of MBS Highway. Brought to you by United Wholesale Mortgage.
Is TRID slowing you down? Not if you're closing with UWM. While other lenders are struggling, we're closing most TRID loans in 15 days or less. Thanks to easy-to-use tools like UClose and Ease, and direct communication from submission to close. Get United at UWM.com.
Welcome to Master of the Markets. I'm Barry Habib at MBS Highway. This is created exclusively for Mortgage News Network. Last week showed some more great data on housing. Stocks recovered a little bit. Oil recovered a little bit. So where do we go from here? At the end of this week, we do get some important data on the jobs picture. Going to get the BLS jobs report this Friday. Have a sneaking suspicion that it might come in a little underwhelming. Now, what's interesting about that is it should be good for interest rates, which have been terrific of late. Remember, you heard us forecast this, saying the 10-year Treasury yield would dip below 2%. Sure enough, that's happened. Told you about the stock market was going to decline. But now we see the stock market starting to rally a little bit. So where does it go from here? Think about this. Here's the connection, okay? So it starts with the Fed. Now, the Fed doesn't have a lot of control over mortgage rates directly, but watch the linkage as we go through this here. The Fed is in its, craziness perhaps, when they came out with their dots, which is their forecast for where they expect the Fed funds rate to be, they were forecasting 4 rate hikes in 2016. Now, why anybody pays attention to this is beyond me, because the Fed is horrible at this. And if you take a look at their history, they're always wrong. And you look at some of the Fed members, you have to wonder, what are these guys and gals smoking? What are they drinking? What are they thinking? Because some of the forecasts are so ridiculously out of touch with what's even potentially possible, okay? So when we take a look at the Fed dots and these 4, the stock market still took it to heart. And we said after the Fed rate hike, we thought stocks would drop and bonds would improve and rates would decline. Sure enough, we've seen that. But now stocks are trying to rally, and interestingly enough, rallying on some bad news in the economy, like the GDP report being weak. So when we take a look at all of this and we put it together, so the stock market, in order for it to really gain momentum and rally and regain its footing, the Fed has to kind of abandon this notion of 4 Fed rate hikes in 2016. It's crazy because every other central bank is cutting rates. Japan last week said they're cutting rates to negative. They're debasing their currency. That makes our exports much more difficult. We're actually, in this particular case, importing deflation. That's not what we want. You have the European Central Bank saying they're going to become more aggressive. China is cutting rates and debasing the yuan against the dollar. So it would be lunacy for the Fed to hike rates. That would just exacerbate the problem, make the dollar much stronger, make our exports much more expensive, hurt corporates which already are struggling with profits. And in addition to that, we'd be importing deflation because we'd make foreign goods cheaper. That means we're importing deflation, the opposite of what we want. We want to bring in inflation to meet the Fed's target. So the Fed is really very, very confused. They kind of don't know what to do. And now they've gone out and said, oh, all these things about the economy being so strong and hiking rates. They're like, how do we backpedal from this? They already look ridiculous. How do they make themselves not look more ridiculous? It's a tough situation for them, but they've really kind of put themselves in this corner because of the poor judgment that they've exercised. And look, remember, most of these Fed members, they're academics. They've never so much as had a lemonade stand. Okay, so do they understand business? In theory, yes. In reality, not so much. So we have these individuals running the central bank, don't always get the results we want. And now they've provided this drug, this steroid, this heroin to the markets, and the stock market, you could see the reaction. The second that is kind of taken away a little bit, goes into a horrible withdrawal syndrome. So as stocks decline, as we've seen, that money goes into the bond market. That's helped interest rates. So interestingly enough, if stocks begin to rally, that could actually hurt interest rates. But the one good thing that interest rates have going for them is this very low inflation. Last week, we saw that the employment cost index, very low, only 2%. Again, GDP, terrible, 0.7%. And the Fed, in its statement, of course, they didn't raise rates, but they tried to thread the needle saying, hey, employment's strong, but inflation is soft. So they tried to kind of thread the needle. But the employment is strong argument is just plain stupid. Because yes, we got 292,000 jobs last month. 40% of them were 16 to 19-year-olds. In December, does this spell maybe some potential seasonal hiring? Why is it that the Fed can't see this and we can? You wonder about who is running the show here. So when we talk about the Fed being in a position now to maybe start unwinding this, if they do, unwinding their thought process and kind of coming clean and saying that we're not going to hike, the stock market could gain some momentum, and then we'll have to watch mortgage bonds because it could get a little bit rocky there. Now, if you want to follow this every single day, especially this week with the jobs report coming up, again, I think it's going to be a soft jobs report, but how does that impact stocks? How does that impact your personal wealth? How does it impact your customers and interest rates? What advice should you be giving? Why don't you click on Get a Free Trial? Hey, if you already used a free trial, pony up and go ahead and buy MBS Highway. Don't your customers deserve it? Don't you deserve it? What industry wouldn't buy the right tools so they can provide their customers with the best service possible? Are you any exception? Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
At UWM, our AEs receive over 500 hours of training each year to keep you current with the industry. We give you direct access to your own team of underwriters who return your calls in 3 hours or less. And we provide exclusive products and tools that give your business a competitive edge. In fact, everything we do at UWM is dedicated to championing your success, which is why more brokers choose UWM than any other lender. World-class service, exclusive products, groundbreaking tools, and you. Get united with us at UWM.com.
This is Mortgage News Network.